You're listening to a 3CR podcast recorded in a 3CR community radio studio in Melbourne, Australia. If you like what you hear, please consider donating or subscribing so we can keep bringing you more independent community content. For more information, go to 3cr.org.au.
Slavery is back.
Welcome to a place where private business profit from a captive labour force, yet pennies are spent on medical services to a population in which the Indigenous, the poor and the mentally ill are overrepresented. Where isolation, humiliation and degradation are facts of life. Welcome to prison.
It depends who's telling the story, I suppose. The prisoners would have one view, the people who work in the prison system would have another, and I think it's up to people to decide where the truth is.
Give government propaganda and the media spin doctors the flick. And check out Doin Time for news, views and tunes on prison issues from Guantanamo Bay to Christmas Island to prisons and detention centres everywhere. Every Monday at 4 p.m. on your community radio 3CR.
We are still fired up and we're still talking about revolution.
Hello and welcome to the Doin Time show. This is 3CR Community Radio, 855 AM on the dial, streaming live on www.3cr.org.au. And a warning that this episode of Doin Time may contain audio descriptions of Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander people who have died, and discussion of deaths in custody, and also discussion of women being hurt. First up on the show, we will bring you an interview with Ilo DIaz from Centre Against Racial Profiling about sweeping police powers, which increases racial profiling. After that, you will hear a recording of a rally against Islamophobia located at the office of Andre Giles in Thomastown. And more about that later. I actually did the recording also with Rob accompanying me from Doin Time as well. But first, from the Centre Against Racial Profiling Community Alert. Designated area declared. Where? Werribee train station and surrounds. When? Wednesday the 26th of February, 1pm until 9pm. Werribee station and area around the station have been declared a designated area. In designated areas, police have extra powers to stop and search people. Be aware when moving through the area. Designated areas are often declared in areas where racialised communities live and transit, impacting people of colour the most. We know that these searches only find something 1% of the time. This police practice bypasses important legal requirements for police to conduct searches, exposes racialised communities to over-policing and barely finds any contraband items. Joining us on the show, we have Ilo DIaz, who will give some background and overview about the situation and the sweeping police powers. And in case people have just tuned in, this is the Doin Time show. This is Marisa, and I'll be with you for the next hour. Hello, Ilo, welcome to the program.
Hi, Marisa. Thanks for having me.
It's lovely to have you indeed. Now, Ilo, you and Tamar have started up a centre. Can you just give listeners the name of that centre again and just give us some background about it?
Yeah, sure. You're right. So Dr. Tamar Hopkins and I, late last year, started up a centre called the Centre Against Racial Profiling. Both Tamar and I have been working in this space for a number of years around racial profiling, police powers, and trying to keep the police accountable, specifically around racialised communities. And so we thought we'd get together and try to combine our efforts and create a bit of a movement in a centre that can bring together have a place where we can bring together all those pieces of work that are trying to push back on state powers, specifically around communities of colour. And so, we've got this centre, the Centre Against Racial Profiling, and we mainly do three things at the moment. One of them is research, which is, getting police data, trying to get that out of the police's hands, and we can have a look at it and go through and analyse it with a fine-tooth comb about who's actually been impacted the most and what practices have been the most dangerous for our community. And so in that vein, we did some reporting last year about those exact practices. So that's number one, our research. Our second is workshops. So both Tamara and I run workshops around police powers, but also how to push back on overreach, police overreach, and what's the best way in which us as community members, but also community workers, can push back in a safe way against these overreach powers. And the final one is movement building, which is really where we're trying to bring awareness and bring to light all these practices and try to bring the community along with us to push back against these ever-expanding police powers.
Exactly, and that's really commendable work that you and Tamara are doing. I've actually had the pleasure of interviewing Dr. Tamara Hopkins many times on this show, and yourself too, Ilo, a few times. So I'm wondering, what are the next steps? Because, I mean, these police powers have been creeping up, haven't they? And how does it actually specifically affect people of colour? What is racial profiling?
Yeah, I mean, good. A lot to unpack there. Look, racial profiling is whenever the state uses their powers to specifically go after a group of people disproportionately. There are academic definitions and legal definitions about racial profiling, but if you ask any person of colour what it is, it's when police pick you out because you're the brown guy or the black woman or whatever it is. And so I think we all know and understand what it feels like and what it is to be racially profiled. And it's a tool in the police's arsenal that they've been using for years and years, ever since the start of colonisation, to be able to impose the state's will over a certain group of people and control certain parts of the population, because police have these powers that they can choose. It's called discretion, so they can choose to implement them or to not. And so when they choose to implement, it says a lot about who they're targeting and what they're looking for. And so when we're looking at racial profiling, when we're looking exactly at that, it's like, when did they use those powers? On who did they use those powers on? And then what was the outcome of having used that? And is it impacting certain people disproportionately? Which, a lot of the research says it does. Look, and your question as to how we change this, because you're absolutely right, police powers have been expanding year on year pretty much. Victoria is not one of the biggest police forces per capita in the nation. Also got one of the biggest budgets per capita in the nation. Yet they keep crying poor, saying they need more money, more funds. They don't have enough people, enough personnel. And so you're really going to question, if they're crying poor, yet the richest police force in the state, and have all these powers, and what are they doing? What are they doing? Are they so bad at their jobs that they are still so bad, despite all this money and funding and resources? Or is it that they just want to collect more and more power and really, really solidify their place in the state by telling certain parts of our community what we can and can't do?
Exactly, and having designated areas like that is just so daunting and stereotyped, and isn't it?
Yeah, definitely. So designated areas, for your listeners that may not know, the areas that the police can declare as they call it a designated area, and they'll say from this place to this place, from this time to this time, or this area is a designated area, and it provides police with extra powers. A lot of those powers are around searching, questioning, detaining, also around removing a mask. These kinds of powers, and it just allows police to do that with pretty much zero accountability mechanisms behind it. And these laws came into effect many years ago under the guise of a rising crime, a knife crime, which is a typical police crime call. When they want more powers, as they say there's an increase of knife crime. So these powers were introduced back then to try to, as a police, try to say we need more powers to stop these knife crimes. But since their introduction, we've seen that designated areas are usually declared in the same places. It's the Dandenongs, the Broadmeadows, the Werribes, the places where the community, racialised communities live, work and transit. That's where they're targeting. They're always around the same places. They are also used in protest spaces where they weren't initially designed to be used. But they're also used there. And so we see this deliberate targeting of police having these massive sweeping powers on certain areas where, surprise, surprise, racialised communities are living, transiting or working.
So basically, has there been new legislation through Parliament at the moment?
They are looking at moving on a few new bills. So, you mentioned ever-increasing police powers. There's a bunch of new bills that are trying to be introduced at the moment that will increase police powers really dramatically. And one of them is to extend the designated areas bill. So, look, it's a bit technical, but the short of it is that there's very few. At the moment, there's a few hurdles that the police have to jump over to be able to declare an area a designated area. What they're trying to do is to lower those hurdles so that it's easier for them to declare one. They can declare it for longer, and they don't have to give as much notice to the public. I mean, there's already very, very little notice to the public, but they want to have even less. And so I think all this expansions, growing police powers is leading us down a very, very dangerous path, I fear.
Extremely. In fact, I'm just having a look here at the proposed legislation which would allow police to declare designated search areas based on intelligence suggesting potential violence, and then extend the duration of search periods from 12 hours to 24 hours and reduce the minimum required period between declarations and enforcing a designated area notice from 10 days to 12 hours. What sort of paraphernalia is that?
I mean, that's exactly right. Designated areas are already an extremely, they're one of the ways that the police can be almost unilaterally unaccountable to their powers. I mean, they are an extraordinary piece of just overreach police powers in certain areas. So if you're going to give the police those powers, they need to be really highly regulated. They need to be very, very, you've got to have a really good reason to be able to pretty much stifle anyone's freedom of movement and privacy and detention, to be able to do these powers. And so it already should be, in very minimal circumstances, but we know it's not. We know they use them at train stations, at shopping centres, at shopping strips, where people are going about their everyday business. So it's already so invasive. And now with this new proposed legislation, they just want to make it even more so. There'll just be so much less accountability and checks and balances. It's pretty much giving police a clean slate.
Are you still there, Ilo?
Yes, I'm still here.
Thank you.
Can you hear me?
Yeah, I can hear you. Yeah, yeah. It's pretty bad. I mean, one of the ongoing topics and that we often discuss on this show, particularly with you and Tamar, is the analysis of current search practices shows that when police search people they perceive as African, Middle Eastern, Mediterranean, Indian, Asian, they are consistently less likely to find reported items compared to searches of people they perceive as white. Can you comment on that?
Yeah, 100%. So, Tamar did this research last year looking at all these searches data that we got from the police. And we were able to analyse every single one of those searches for racial profiling. Now, police in Victoria have this very special category when they search someone, which is in their paperwork, they're forced to say the perceived ethnicity of somebody. It's not what ethnicity they are, it's what the police think they are. And that's a really important distinction because it means that we're not saying these are the race, the ethnic backgrounds of people committing crime. No, it's what police think they are. And so we're really getting into the mind of the police officer as when they're forming a suspicion if race has anything to do with it. And surprise, surprise, when we look at the data really closely, we find that police find less contraband items on some of these racialized communities than white Caucasian people. I mean, it's blatant racial profiling. I'll also comment that specifically in the designated areas, there was a great piece of research came out just last week or the week before by the Liberty Victoria's rights advocacy project. They released a report around designated areas. Now, they also FOI'd the police, and they got search data exactly around the designated areas. And they asked, how many in these designated areas, when you search someone, how many times do you actually find something? And the response was in about 1% of the time. In about 1% of the time, are police actually finding anything, a contraband item, in these designated areas. So not only are they massively overstepping their powers, or a massive overreach of police power, they're also ineffective. They just don't work.
Absolutely. And what about any workshops? Are they open to the public? Can people get in touch with the centre?
Yes. Please get in touch with us. So we run a number of different workshops, but at the moment we're about to launch an open workshop it's specifically targeted for community workers. Those of us who work in the community sector and do community work and do client-facing work. And it's about how, one, understanding your rights around policing, so what police can and can't do to you as a worker. But secondly, it's really that important piece of advocacy. So what can we as community workers do when we're seeing a police interaction? How can we go up to police? How can we speak to them? How can we try to create a bit of institutional clout so that our clients get a little bit of protection when they're interacting with police? And that's really focused on those community workers. Look, there'll be more detail coming out, so I'll send your listeners to our website, or they can email us directly as well if they want any more information.
And what is it? Do you have the email address there?
It's info@centreagainstracialprofiling.au.
Fantastic. And the website?
The website is centreagainstracialprofiling.au.
Ilo, thank you so much for coming onto the program. Do you have any final comments before we finish?
No, look, I think thank you so much for reading out that community alert. I think anyone who lives in transit around Werribee on Wednesday, just to keep your eyes out, there will probably be a higher police presence there, and just be aware that you will be transiting through a designated area in and around the Werribee train station. So, please keep safe and go well.
Yeah, it's so appalling. We need to really watch this space.
Definitely. Thank you so much for having me.
Thanks a lot, Ilo. Bye-bye. Take care. Bye-bye.
Bye.
And that was Ilo DIaz from Centre Against Racial Profiling about sweeping police powers, which increases racial profiling. And there'll be quite a lot more on this show as the year goes on. And, please take care of each other.
The Victorian State Government is planning repressive new laws to restrict protest, including a ban on wearing protective masks, restrictions on symbols of resistance, including flags, and creation of so-called safe zones around religious buildings, putting significant areas of the CBD off limits. We must say no to this attack on democracy. Protest is a fundamental human right. Join the fight at a mass rally hosted by Defend Dissent Coalition, Wednesday, 19th of March, 5:30pm, State Parliament. That's Wednesday, 19th of March, State Parliament, 5:30pm. Defend Dissent Coalition is a 3CR supporter. And you're back with the Doin Time show, and certainly
I didn't have the time to speak about the protests as we were talking about communities of colour, but please, listeners, do rock up to that mass rally, and I'll certainly be having more people being interviewed about the protest stuff as well, because that's terribly important. And in fact, historically, this show has done a lot of work around human rights and protests. It's approximately 4:19, and I want to bring you now some very special audio that I'll be playing you. As I said in my intro, I went to Thomastown. It was outside Andre Giles' office, Labor MP there, and there were a number of speakers. It's an anti-Islamic rally, and there is some audio. I'll just read out some of the speakers. I'm not going to play all of them, but do stay tuned to the breakfast shows and other shows at 3CR, and you'll hear this, I'd say, throughout the week. So the MC was Omar Hassan from the Victorian Socialists, and the other speaker you'll be hearing on the show today is David Glantz, anti-Zionist Jewish activist with Jews for a Free Palestine. And then you'll hear from Sue Bolton, Socialist Alliance councillor for Merribeck and federal election candidate for Wills. And then you'll hear a speech from myself as well, Marisa from the Doin Time show, and then also from Halima, local activist and organiser. It was a wonderful rally, and it was just really amazing to see everybody united, and there were lots of other speakers. So do stay tuned at 3CR. And one of the things that I really thought about yesterday when I was recording was we are our own media, and we need radio stations like 3CR to actually keep recording things like this, because one of the themes that actually came out of the rally was people were saying that the mainstream media simply is not reporting the real issues here. So you'll hear more about that shortly, but also just a content warning that a Muslim woman was actually attacked for wearing her special jihad, and so I wanted to actually stress that there is a content warning. And so here we go, and I will now play the audio.
Say it loud, say it clear, Muslims are welcome here. Say it loud, say it clear, Muslims are welcome here.
Muslims in Australia have been under siege for more than 20 years, since the so-called War on Terror, which decimated multiple countries in the Middle East. Muslim people do not feel safe at day or at night, going shopping or in their houses for fear of raids, of harassment, of surveillance. They face discrimination at work. You can be harassed for standing up for your views and values as an Arab or a Muslim, for expressing our fundamental rights of freedom of speech, for Palestine against war. All these things happen to Arabs and Muslims and their supporters. Currently, 80% of Muslims in Australia report feeling harassed and facing discrimination because of their faith. That is not a one-off incident. That is a lifetime of oppression and discrimination, and it needs to stop now. Our first speaker is David Glantz. David Glantz is an anti-Zionist Jew who's involved in Free Palestine Melbourne and a member of Solidarity. He's interviewed the victims of this attack in Epping, so please make him welcome.
Thank you, Omar. And I too acknowledge we stand on unceded Aboriginal land. And I pay my respects and my condolences to the two women who were the victims of this cowardly, vicious and racist attack. I spoke to Ilo Diaz, who is a childcare educator. She was on her break. She was at the plaza. She was doing a little bit of window shopping. She was walking along, and a woman out of nowhere, who she's never met, who she made no eye contact with, had no interaction with, slapped her so hard across the face it shook her, and then shoved her so hard she fell to the ground and suffered severe bruising. And although she was happy to talk to the media, she does not want to show her face. She was invited to come and speak and tell her story here today, and she is scared to leave the house unless she's going to work or in company. And she said to me she was looked after. A couple of nurses from the hospital were nearby. They looked after her while security and then eventually the police were called. And while they were looking after her, another woman comes up who has been attacked. The ABC named her as Kauthar Ali. And Kauthar was sitting with a friend in the food court with her 2 young children, just chatting, and the woman who committed both these attacks came behind her, grabbed her hijab, and tried essentially to choke her. Again, there was no rationale for this attack except one: Islamophobia. Both the women were attacked for one reason and one reason only, because they were wearing the hijab. And no one should be scared because of what they wear, whether it's religious or non-religious items. Muslim women have the right to go about their business just like everybody else in this society. And as an anti-Zionist Jew, I say that we must condemn all forms of racism. Anti-Semitism is a real and living problem, but Islamophobia is staining the lives of many, many more people. And let's be clear, that woman who committed the offence, and someone's been arrested, and we'll see how that works out in the courts. That woman who committed the offence did not invent Islamophobia. She didn't wake up one day and say, "Oh, it's Tuesday, I think I'll go out and be nasty to Muslims." The idea that Muslims are a problem, the idea that Muslims are terrorists, the idea that Muslims do not belong, comes from the very top of society. It comes from the politicians and the media, who feed the idea over and over again to people that there is something wrong with Muslims. Just this week, Peter Dutton, speaking at a conference supposedly against anti-Semitism, invented an entirely false story that the Labour government was giving Palestinian refugees from Gaza citizenship so that they could vote Labour. And he said, "How can you do this? They haven't been properly checked. They could be terrorists. This is just bias." He completely made the story up. Not one Palestinian refugee from Gaza is anywhere close to becoming a citizen. But the man who wants to be the next Prime Minister could stand up in front of journalists and invent a story essentially to reseed the idea into people's minds that Palestinians and Muslims are terrorists, they are a threat to the so-called Australian way of life. And Peter Dutton might withdraw that story at one point. He may say, "Oh, I was not properly briefed." But that idea will have gone into the minds of thousands of more people. And some of those thousands of people will act on that racism. Anthony Albanese eventually expressed his condolences and sympathy to the 2 women attacked at Epping Plaza, Elaf and Kauthar. He only did it after he'd come under public attack for inaction by the likes of Fatima Payman, what's his name? The cricketer, Usman Khawaja, thank you, Usman Khawaja, and also the Islamic Council. Only then did he say, "Oh yes, this shouldn't have happened, but I have no more to say on the matter." When it's an anti-Semitic attack, you can't shut the bloody people up, can you? It's on and on about we must stop this wave of anti-Semitism. Now, of course, there are acts of anti-Semitism, but the Jewish Council of Australia has examined the reports of anti-Semitism that have been made to the reporting body, and their estimate is 80%, 8 out of 10 reports, are not actually anti-Semitic acts or anti-Semitic abuse. What they are is solidarity with Palestine. There are people saying, I saw someone with kafir, that was anti-Semitic. I heard someone say from the river to the sea, that's anti-Semitic, and that is rubbish. Absolute rubbish. I stand here as a Jewish supporter of Palestine to tell you it is not anti-Semitic to stand against genocide. It is not anti-Semitic to stand against occupation. It is not anti-Semitic to stand against the oppression of the Palestinian people. And as Omar mentioned in his introduction, the head of ASIO also spoke this week and said, Islamophobia, very bad. Anti-Semitism, very bad. But anti-Semitism is our number one priority. Even though the number of cases is much, much less than actually reported, and some of the cases that they have put into the media in recent weeks have turned out to be paper thin. Do you remember the caravan full of explosives? Not only had it been dumped at the side of the road for 2 months, what kind of terror plot that is, I have no idea. People need to go back to TAFE and undertake Terror 101. You don't dump your caravan full of explosives for 2 months until a stranger finds it. But the explosives are 40 years old. Doesn't mean they might not blow up, but they are not being recently stolen for a terror act. And the police, through gritted teeth, are admitting that, probably it was a setup so that criminals could report the explosives and get credit off any kind of sentence. And we're finding that again and again, that the attacks which are being carried out are not being carried out by Palestinians or Muslims or supporters of the Palestinian cause. They're being carried out by petty criminals who are apparently being funded by people unknown. So I think the message is very, very clear. Islamophobia presents a real and present danger, and it's very important that we're out on the streets in defence of our Muslim sisters, saying you should be and you must be safe to go shopping, to go to school, to go to the doctor, to do anything you want, because you should not be persecuted. And that woman will probably end up being found guilty of something. Maybe not of a hate crime, because the police had to be dragged kicking and screaming into taking action over these assaults. But at the end of the day, she will face the courts, but the people who are really responsible for Islamophobia, Peter Dutton, Anthony Albanese, the editor of the Herald Sun, the editor of the Daily Telegraph, the editor of the Australian newspaper, those people will not face criminal charges, but they are the ones driving Islamophobia. And that's why, in some ways, our best revenge is to stay on the streets for Palestine, because this moral panic is being driven as a way of smashing the Palestinian movement. And so let's all remember, the next monthly rally for Palestine is Sunday, March the 23rd, at the State Library. Let us all be there. Jews, Christians, Muslims, with a hijab, without a hijab. Let's all stand there with Palestine and send a message that we are united against hate and fear.
Thank you, David. Say it loud, say it clear. Muslims are welcome here. Say it loud, say it clear. Muslims are welcome here. Okay, our next speaker is Sue Bolton. Sue Bolton is an excellent and well-known counsellor in Marybeck, and she's been a lifelong activist in support of Muslims and Palestine and all sorts of progressive causes. So please make her very, very welcome.
And also, I'm a member of Socialist Alliance, and I bring my solidarity from Socialist Alliance to today's gathering. Islamophobia is entirely manufactured by politicians and the media. And in fact, not just Islamophobia, I'd say refugee phobia and phobia against young people from a black African background. And racism kills. I remember an example when the Liberal Party was going on a massive attack about black African youth gangs. And it has a huge impact because As soon as a young black African boy reaches around the age of 14, they stop getting treated as just a normal teenager and get treated as a gang member.
Shame!
And I remember an occasion when Kevin Andrews, Liberal Party MP, I think he might have retired now.
I think he's dead.
Yeah, hopefully. He was attacking young black African men, and there were a number of assaults on young black African teenagers, and one was killed.
Shame!
So racism kills, and we know from what happened in Epping Shopping Centre, you know, luckily these women weren't killed, but they were severely traumatised by what's happened as people get inspired by politicians or the right-wing media to carry out attacks. And a friend of mine who was also similarly attacked in 2015, Nazrin Amin from Faulkner, was similarly attacked on the upfill line on a train where her head was unprovoked. In great surprise, like unexpected, suddenly someone got up and slammed her head against the wall of a train carriage. And she later on, it was when the Nazis were starting to organise anti-Islam rallies, and a number of politicians were enabling the Nazis in that. And we were organising counter-protests against the Nazis in support of the Muslim community. And Nazrin went on to organise a big Islamophobia public meeting. So it's entirely manufactured. And what happens, whether it's against the Muslim community or against refugees or black Africans, but also whoever the capitalists are targeting at the time, they plant stories in the media to make people frightened of the people they're targeting at the current time. And they don't have to have any basis in any kind of fact. And often entirely manufactured. And even if you look at the Murdoch media and other right-wing media, in reality they're not reporting the news, they're creating the news by planning or setting people up, and you know, it has an effect. So the Murdoch media and the politicians have changed at various points. They've changed public opinion from generally supporting Muslims, supporting refugees, to its reverse. So they're creating the news. They're creating the fear. This fear is not something that people are genetically born with. It's something which is entirely created. But I would caution against relying on laws and the authorities to protect us. Of course they should. Laws should protect us. Police should protect us. But we can't rely on that because we've seen time and time again when racial discrimination laws have been used to target the Muslim community, the Arabic community, people from the Middle East, Palestinians. And we can see that happening in Victoria again as they've been debating this racial discrimination, new racial discrimination law, using anti-Semitism as the justification. And really, if this law goes through all steps in the Parliament House, it will be used to criminalise pro-Palestine views. It's shameful. And then we also see, even beyond the laws, that police, there's a lot of police who are full-on racist, full-on discriminatory against anyone from an Arabic background or pro-Palestine background or people of colour. And so we can't rely on the police. We have to rely really on actions actions like today, and I think it's great that people have organised action today, and we'll have to do more of it. And I also think the action that Shekala proposed in Epping Shopping Centre is a really good idea that we should all get behind. But I think we're going to have to do what we're doing today on a bigger scale, and the politicians never came out against these attacks until Usman Khawaja used his platform to call out the hypocrisy and double standards of the politicians. We shouldn't have to wait for a famous cricket player to communicate to their followers, because this is happening to ordinary everyday people, and not everyone reports these incidents, not everyone knows the key people in the Muslim community, and a lot of people will be suffering in silence. So there's a lot of incidences that are happening that we're not even aware of, where people are refused service in a shop. It might not be as extreme as what these two women experienced. It can be refused service in a shop. It can be all sorts of discriminations. It doesn't have to just be violent. And I know in Faulkner, in the Mirrabek area, there have been women at various times who felt that they can't go out, they can't leave their suburbs, they can't leave their home because of the fear of Islamophobic attacks. It actually really isolates people. And so the more solidarity protests and that we have like this, solidarity with the victims of Islamophobia, and the more we're challenging the racist narrative, the better. And I think the pro-Palestine movement has done that really, really well. So thanks everyone for coming, and also we have to challenge the politicians in the elections, but also on the streets as well, like we're doing today. And as Omar said, I'm standing in the seat of Wills, but there are also lots of other candidates here today as well. Thank you.
Thank you. Muslims are welcome, racists are not. Muslims are welcome.
Racists are not.
Muslims are welcome.
Racists are not.
Muslims are welcome.
Racists are not.
All right, our next speaker is Marisa. She is a community radio presenter on 3CR of a show called Doin Time. She's an anti-racist and anti-Nazi campaigner, and she has been especially committed to supporting Aboriginal and Palestinian people. Please make her welcome.
Hi everybody. I stand in solidarity with our Muslim sisters, and I think it is absolutely disgusting what has happened. The people united shall never be defeated. I actually work at 3CR Community Radio, and I broadcast a show called Doin Time. And Doin Time is a show that airs every Monday from 4 o'clock till 5. Any Nazis are not welcome in my studio. However, anybody who is interested in campaigning against racism and from marginalised communities are definitely welcome, and it's a safe environment. So it's really important to stand in solidarity with our Muslim sisters. And I wanted to say also that this genocide of marginalised communities is unacceptable. Capitalism breeds contempt, and there is massive oppression. And I have been utterly shocked since the pandemic of how much worse things have become. And we really all do need to work together. It's very important, and one of the things that I broadcast on is to build the movement to stop Aboriginal deaths in custody. And I've worked quite a lot also. I've interviewed Free Palestine Melbourne. I have been known to have a studio full of refugees as well. So the reason why I'm giving these examples is just to let people know that it's really important to be inclusive and diverse. And these are the things that are really important because politicians and the corporations are afraid of diversity. And we all need to work together. And I want to honour all the speaker contributions before me and to say that we all need to stand in solidarity with each other and with our Muslim sisters. The people united shall never be defeated.
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 Take care of each other.
Thank you so much, Marisa. I just want to say before I introduce the next speaker that we want to take a solidarity photo here before we leave. So please hang on, there's only 2 more speakers and then we want to take a big solidarity photo to send a message that we are here and what the message is today. So our next speaker is Halima. Halima has been very active as far as I know for the past 2 years, but probably longer. She's a Muslim woman, she's an advocate for Palestine, for her community. She's an activist in the north where a lot of people are not active and she's trying to wake up the community and get people organised. So please make her welcome, one of the organisers of this and so many other actions.
I actually lost my voice this week. Is this loud enough?
Yeah, hold it close.
It's loud enough. Hello? Yeah, I've lost my voice conveniently for Andre Giles because, yeah, he would have got a mouthful. He is better than thankfully here in Australia we do have alternatives, but he is better than the far-right liberals who have been spewing hate across our channels this week about Muslims and just the usual things that they've been doing for so long now that it's just getting boring. Look, I'd like to say that it's unfair that we as Muslims are made to witness the ethnic cleansing of Muslims abroad and the rising Islamophobia here locally. It's not just the Epic Plaza incident. As you are aware, as Sue has said, one of the speakers here today, Muslim woman speaker, got attacked on the upfield line a few years back, simply because she was a Muslim woman and simply because she was wearing a hijab. So these incidences are not isolated and they are increasing, which is not nice. And it just goes to show that our government bodies are continuing not to show it the importance that it deserves. Even protesting outside at Andre Giles' office is not even an option for many other Muslims, as you know, the alternative is far-right MPs who will continue to terrorise the Muslims even further. The actors against Muslims are many, from MPs to media, supremacist ideologies including far-right extremism, from Hinduvite extremists and Zionist terrorism. These actors and perpetrators of anti-Muslim hate are continuously being rewarded in our systems. That's why it's important that we demand the government that we have proper preventative measures and plans to stop anti-Muslim hate. There needs to be more done for Muslims facing hate. Every group of Muslims, and especially priority needs to be given to Muslims who are facing the worst oppressions here as well as globally. We want Andrew to give more funding to organisations that are that are more inclusive to Muslims. There are many. We want more funding to organisations that promote inclusion of Muslims and festivals that increase awareness about Muslims and their way of life. We want Islamophobia task force. It's unfair that our government is giving anti-Semitism, which it has blatantly weaponized right in front of our eyes, a task force, continuing to show the selective outrage, the selective humanity, and quite frankly, Muslims do deserve a lot more because obviously of the increase in these incidences. We want this task force so that it ensures government bodies, local councils, public servants are not engaging in racial and religious vilification of Muslims. We want our government, and we want especially Andre Giles, because he is, that's his department, to put restrictions on individuals coming to Australia from regions where they have carried out atrocities or have committed anti-Muslim hate. As in the case with the New Zealand, to put restrictions on IDFs who have committed atrocities in Gaza from coming to Australia. We want more granting of visas to Palestinians. The Israeli counterparts have had triple the number of visas, and Palestinians deserve far more because of what they're going through. So there is a lot more things we would like to say, and there's a lot more things that we would like for the government to do for us. And we would like to speak to Andre Giles, and we hope that he actually listens.
Thank you so much, sister.
And you just heard a recording of an anti-Islamophobic rally at Thomastown, outside Andre Giles' office in High Street, Thomastown. Very refreshing that that the activism is spreading to the suburbs as well. A special thank you to Rob, who accompanied me to the rally, does a lot of behind the scenes stuff, and also to Peter, who let me know about the action. Anyway, before we wrap up, I'm going to play some announcements, but before we do that, just wanted to say look out for the rest of that audio over the coming weeks, specifically probably on the breakfast shows or other shows. A cheerio also to Green Left Weekly, who were there as well.
On International Women's Day, we're hitting the streets because women are still fighting for the respect, wages and safety we deserve. The march takes place on Thursday, 6th of March at 5:30 p.m, departing the State Library. We welcome all cis and trans women and anyone who stands in solidarity against gender-based injustice. International Women's Day is about radical change, demanding the changes we need for safety, respect and equality. RSVP at iwd25.com.au for updates. Victorian Trades Hall Council is a 3CR supporter.
What's taking place in Palestine is horrendous.
Here are some ways that you can keep yourself informed and involved.
Listen in to Palestine Remembered every Saturday morning at 9:30am or listen to the podcast.
Join the APAN mailing list at apan.org.au for updates, news about actions you can get involved in and where you can donate to provide humanitarian assistance.
Listen to other news and current affairs programs on 3CR that also cover Palestine.
The oppression of the Palestinian people has been going on for 75 years. It has to stop. You can be part of making that happen by staying informed and active.
APAN is a proud supporter of 3CR.
Hey, dear listeners, 3CR Community Radio is hosting a 24-hour program on March the 8th, starting at 12 midnight on March the 7th and finishing at 12 midnight on March the 8th. We will have many interviews, music and more. Listen to 3CR Community Radio Station on the dial 855 AM on digital radio 3CR and streaming at 3cr.org.au to commemorate this important day, International Women's Day, with us.
Come down to Camp Anarchy, 8th to the 10th of March, 2025, for a chance to connect with community and commune with nature. Join us for workshops and music at the beautiful Camp Eureka site in the Yarra Valley. Bring your ideas for an egalitarian First Nation and worker-centred future, free of capitalist oppression. Workshop proposals welcome. Contact info@campanarchy.org. Camp Anarchy is a 3CR supporter.
And we're nearing the end of our show. It's approximately 4:53, and this is Marisa from the Doin Time show. And I wanted to thank Ilo for coming onto the show. You heard an interview with Ilo from the Centre Against Racial Profiling. And then you heard some audio with a range of speakers talking about Islamophobia. And stay tuned now every Monday from 4 to 5 for the Doin Time show. We're going to be going out pretty soon with our theme song Black Fella, White Fella by the Rumpy Band. But before I go, I just wanted to say, again, we are our own media, and please support stations like 3CR, who actually reports on real media rather than hate speech. And it's goodbye from Marisa. Stay tuned every Monday from 4 to 5 for the Doin Time show. Thanks a lot. Bye.
You've been listening to a 3CR podcast. If you found it valuable, please consider donating or subscribing to support independent community radio. To find out more, go to 3cr.org.au.